Welcome, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to be hosting this interesting discussion about agentic AI in the enterprise with Professor Oliver Gassmann from the University of St. Gallen and Romano Roth from Zühlke. He's the Global Chief for Cybernetic Transformation. I am very excited to hear what you all will tell us about or what we discuss regarding agentic. It's been the hype word over the last year, I'd say. We've also seen lots of news about companies struggling to actually derive real value from AI. And so we're constantly discussing whether this is a bubble or not. We're also, I think, at least amongst the two of you, in some disagreement about how far we would go between a fully agentic enterprise, so AI-only enterprise, to a more human-centered organization. So I'm really looking forward to this. Maybe, Oliver, you can get us started with sort of your thoughts about how you would describe the agentic enterprise, what you think we would have to know about agentic AI.
All right. So thank you very much, Naomi. We're at the core of the agentic enterprise is obviously the AI agent. That is actually in the core a software entity as we used to have it already in the past, combined with an LLM. This entity has actually described goals and a description of tools. Tools are company data, company apps, the web, and also other agents which could be combined. And the agentic enterprise, as the ultimate goal, is a fully automated organization where actually the agents actually have the lead and start actually with small functions, small agent islands, but actually go further towards the automation. Maybe comparable with the manless fabric factories, what you see already today in many countries, actually even in China.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about the dark factories, right, that we know from various auto manufacturers, for instance.
That's right. And how to transfer that actually to the non-manufacturing world and to those functions and processes.
Yeah, maybe you can expound on that a little bit and tell us where you see the key potentials for agentic in this sense.
Yeah, I think the key part of it is actually those areas where you could standardize and where you also can live with today's hallucinations. And that is not if you are in the industrial process where you actually, if you have a 24/7 factory running, you can't actually have two different outputs variations if you ask twice. But if you work actually with a customer support service, if you are in the sales organization, these are actually the areas where I see the biggest applications right now for agentic islands, where you have actually a few areas where you could automate.
That sounds fabulous. Let me jump to Romano, who I believe is working on these sorts of things. Maybe you can share some of your insights on how this has been working, which companies you've been doing it with, what sorts of potentials you're seeing there.
So right now, we see quite a lot of these systems coming up. But when I look what is really feasible at the moment, I can clearly see that many companies are using AI agents, but as you also can see is they are not running completely autonomous. And what you see is sort of they are doing 5 to maybe 7 steps completely on their own, but then you have a human in the loop in the end, which needs to do some stuff, and which in my opinion is not really bad, but it is not sort of completely autonomous or the agentic enterprise that Oliver Gassmann just described. And when you look at what the problem is, then usually it is sort of the refinement of the task. When we look at what agentic AI is, then you give it a target, and then that software pursues that target. It plans the steps, it executes, it uses the tools, and it comes with an output out of it. So when we look at what an agentic enterprise is, then it's much about performance, about throughput, and creating a lot of stuff. And when we look at how enterprises today work, they are socio-technical systems where, of course, the throughput is quite essential, but you have quite a lot of loops. This is why I usually say, look, it is quite cool, the technology that we have, but it is, of course, also applicable to, let's say, smaller enterprises. For example, if you have an online shop which sells black socks, I'm pretty sure you can create an agentic enterprise out of it. But if you have, for example, a global insurance provider, I doubt that such an enterprise will be an agentic enterprise in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but maybe we could directly jump on that because I think it's the idea about where do you drive? Is it efficiency or is it customer value? And I fully agree with you, Romano. The more we go towards customer value, the human side is still crucially important because it's at the end, it's perceived value, and a lot of perceived value what you actually have is actually at the end the human on the other side. However, if we still think, and I like to think the extreme. So when we first described the agentic enterprise, and with my colleague and Joachim Vincent and myself, we submitted it a year ago. It has been rejected because it seems to be too far away from reality. It has been the description, what is actually needed to become actually a fully automated enterprise. So the idea of creating a unicorn with a handful of people and creating it fully automized. I fully agree with you that it is actually difficult. But I see the biggest part, and I follow here the former CTO of Google, Urs Hölzle, who just said, the whole Gen AI applications for the next 10 years are actually mainly in the efficiency area. And if we fully work on that, but also rethink the way we work, and I come back a bit to the discussion we had in the 90s of re-engineering the company. They were Hammondport, Champi had been the colleagues working actually mainly on this process redesign. I just think, it's really thinking from end-to-end processes, how we fully radically can transform actually our business. That there we also have actually areas, if we work better on the technological areas, and I see a lot of weaknesses at the moment still, but if we see kind of the improvement, what is going on, that we are able actually to really develop end-to-end solutions. It might start right now, it started with simple islands. The next step will be really end-to-end processes where we have connected agent teams, agentic AI teams, and then at the end actually a radical transformed actually agentic new business model. And if we think to that, I know right now we're far away, and I fully agree with you. We are super happy if we have achieved these RAG solutions, what Zühlke did with Unica, to have clear distinction, is it life, is it mobility, and is it a building where I have the damage, and automate very kind of islands in that in the area of insurance processes. But maybe that is just the start, similar as you had in the 80s, actually the automation of factories, where we also started with very simple steps and actually simple islands. And the goal might be just doing more with less. And I'm just simply about that. How we create actually additional maybe customer experience with human value might be a next thing, but maybe just following by that vision of, yeah, doing much more with much, much less.
Yeah.
Would you follow here?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What I usually use when I consult companies is a framework where I say, look, we have to transform the work, and when you put that on the horizontal scale, then you can say, how much do we need to transform the work we are at a moment doing? So adapting the processes, or how do we work? And on the vertical axis, you can say, okay, and how much do we give to an AI, or we co-create together with the AI, or we keep it with the humans? And it's quite interesting when you put that on a scale, then you get 4 areas where you work more with AI, or where you transform also the work. And with that, you can say, okay, the work that we have at the moment is perhaps in that area. And now the thinking starts. Can we transform the work? Can we sort of give something to the AI, or does it need to be done by the humans? And this thinking process, and here we completely align, Oliver, is the essential part, where we really need to look at every process step that we have at the moment and think about it, whatever we can change it, the process itself, or if we can give it to AI and then again change the process or not. And I think this is the interesting thing, and this thinking is not done at the moment. And this is also my major critique at the moment to many companies with their POCs, where they are just sort of take the process that we have, add AI to it, and then be frustrated because it didn't work, or it didn't give them the performance improvements or the value they have expected.
Mm-hmm.
So Romano, may I drill down on that a little bit and ask about sort of specific tips and tricks you have on how one should think about this differently if you really want to start reorganizing workflows in a more substantial and value-driving way?
Yeah, here, in my opinion, it's very important that you sort of understand what AI is, what we have with AI, and here already the huge problem starts. At the moment, the whole discussion about AI focuses on generative AI, which is a small portion of the whole AI landscape. At the moment, we are very focused there, and generative AI is nothing else than a neural network that we have, which is pre-trained with data, which is very good at generating text, images, or videos, which is quite awesome. But in the end, when you look at it, it's just a pattern matching engine, and it can be wrong, and it has its limitations, but that's what it is, and it's quite awesome tool to use. Now, with tooling at the moment, our focus in many companies is about that tool, and we don't think about the processes and also the organizations around. And now the tip that I have to many of my customers is go away from the tool itself. Don't think about the vendor or what kind of LLM that I should use. Think more about identifying the processes and in the process the bottlenecks. And what I use there is the so-called value stream mapping, which is a very, very old technique. It comes from the Toyota production system, and of course in Lean and in DevOps we use that quite a lot. You map all of the steps of your process, you analyze it, you analyze the process time, the lead time, and the percentage complete and accuracy, and out of that you get a very clear view where you have bottlenecks in your process. Based on that, on the current view, you say, okay, how can the future look like? And now with the future, now that you have a clear picture of the process and you have a clear picture of where the problem areas are, you can create a new process, maybe with AI in it, or maybe not because we don't need to plug AI in just for the sake of AI. If we can improve the process by itself, then it's quite awesome. And this is, in my opinion, the important step. And also there, one of the major problems that I see is at the moment, we try to automate things. But automation is the last step. First, you need to understand the requirement and where this requirement comes from. Then you need to simplify it to the point where it's as simple as possible. And then you need to execute it and learn about it. And if the whole thing works and everything is good, then you automate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here actually I fully agree. But maybe showing actually a simple example, the telecom industry. I like very much the telecom example of the autonomous network agents, how they used to use their RAN network, so their radio access network. And that was a very interesting thing. What they did actually is first look actually what drives uncertainty. And these are often ad hoc events like a demonstration which hasn't been planned, a festival, ad hoc festival, or even a traffic jam on Easter Thursday before the Gotthard. So everybody stands there, is standing still, and then ad hoc you start actually by using your mobile phone, and it hasn't planned because these are areas where actually there's no traffic yet. What is actually doing? They have actually first an event agent, and the event agent is actually scraping data from social media every 15 minutes, scrapes data and just said, hey, there seems to be kind of a gathering. That's like an event, there's a social event, or there's a traffic jam, or there's just something where there seems that traffic might come up. Then actually there's an automated network segmentation, this automated resegmented, and there is then also a guardian agent. They call it the monitoring agent, which is actually checking the performance KPIs of the network. If it's improving or it's just stable, then the automated change, what happens is will be left. If it's after the resegmentation, which is automated done by a remediation agent, hasn't been improved, the performance, or is actually getting more negative, then actually they put it back. And these kind of simple things where you save really a lot of human resources, because in 8 minutes they are doing right now things what humans had actually needed 1 hour. So with more humans, more effort, actually they had less performance. These are kind of one of the easy parts. And I just think the same time of kind of solving easy parts of existing business, what we call the today's S-curve, and just checking out, how can we improve with technology, existing things are the one thing. But the much bigger thing, and I here fully agree, is actually if we understand actually the drivers of uncertainty, if we understand the drivers of real value, of the business value, if we understand the driver for inefficiency, and here I like your value mapping. I forgot it. It's kind of a back in when we studied, we learned that stuff of the Toyota manufacturing system. But I like it a lot because it has a lot to do how actually to improve actually also lean systems. You first always need to understand, and then you actually have to you actually design the process. And that is what I mentioned also, and here we are both on the same side of the process redesign of the 90s, where you actually have to think of what are the drivers of processes, redesign the process, and only then we start with automation. Well, one very different thing is if we think, we are a startup and we are revolutionizing right now full in industry, and I just pretend I just don't know how I would design a global insurance company. Would I actually have these distribution agents, sales agents, I mean physical human agents who sell actually all the insurances? Probably not. In today's times, actually, we would design it differently. And that is right now kind of also the innovator's dilemma trap. What the big global insurance company, what you're talking about, is actually in right now. Obviously, they have a lot of core competence and they have complex processes, they have a lot of humans involved. But on the other side, if you would design it on a clear white paper, on a green field, you would design an insurance company, it would look very different. And what I see right now, this is the opportunity for startup companies to revolutionize really whole industries, especially in areas where you have a lot of documentation. I just recently talked to a medtech company, a lot of regulation is there. These regulation you could fully assign actually with a RAG solution, really fully assign it. So say we stay in the norms, we stay in the regulation, but we automate actually things in how we, for example, develop specs. And I think that's the beauty of thinking radically outside of the box and pretend, you know, if we would design it new and if we would have only 5 people, how would we design actually a global insurance company? I am fully aware that also hopefully in the next decades we won't be there right now. However, we have all seen companies where kind of a really radical redesign happened in radically new ways. We think the space industry, whether we look at the automotive industry, or we look to all the internet-based companies in the last 20 years, things had been made what previously have been thought possible. And I think as an innovation scholar, I like also to stretch a bit, you know, how could we think more radical? And the idea of thinking, let's build an agentic enterprise, maybe without any human involved knowing that this is maybe not wanted, but it's a radical approach to radically redesign even the core processes, not in the minor process as I had in my example, but also in the core processes. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And I follow also a lot of people that are currently are in startups and are working in such companies. How they call it is the AI native company. And what you can clearly see in there is the following. What they are doing is they are leveraging AI platforms. When we talk about AI platforms, there is LangChain or there is Copilot as a platform, and of course I think there is also one from OpenAI. These are sort of the platforms where you have prompt libraries. That's one core thing. And on the other hand, you have these agents in there where you as a normal employee can create your own agents. And of course, what they are doing, they created agents like sales agents or customer relationship agents or support agents, which can do tasks for them. On the other hand, they have quite a huge prompt library, which is shared with all of the people, which of course is quite awesome. Then when we go, this is sort of on the process side. On the other hand, when we look at the organizational side, then you see they are very, very lean setup. They don't have as many people that other organizations have, and usually also they have quite a flat hierarchy. And usually what they are doing is they have the people, and these people use agents, and sort of these are their employees, and this is sort of the accelerator that they use. And therefore, when we look at that picture, and I mean, these are now AI native companies, then we see where the trajectory is going. We will have companies with flat hierarchies where you have employees that have a specific task or role, and they are leveraging massively agents that, of course, they program for themselves. Or they leverage agents that the company gives to them. And you can clearly see one of the key things about such a company is sort of that AI platform where you bring in the governance. And this is something you should not underestimate at the moment. And it's also quite a big discussion. You can see you have company data in there. And the big question at the moment is where do you want to have your company data? And at the moment, I have quite a lot of C-level discussions exactly about that, because many companies fear sort of, let's say, putting the data into a cloud environment or into an environment where they think when they have, for example, a lawsuit or when there is a problem, they cannot or they don't have sort of the legal obligations with that country. And this is quite a stretch at the moment, where I see that European cloud providers and also AI platform providers are sort of jumping into that gap that is going up, and that's quite an interesting thing.
Yeah, I fully agree. We also thought, even like, for example, for patent data, right? How to automate actually processes which are driven actually by patent attorneys or by industry people, by innovators in industry who actually would like to automate patents. Now, how to think, for example, freedom of action, freedom to operate, how to do litigation, how to prepare litigation cases, how to develop actually patent drafts. And now, if we would build an agentic system for that, we would actually try to avoid around Gemini and OpenAI things. Why? Because people feel just in today's geopolitical environment, feel uncertain, whether we really should use American servers or American companies, American LLMs. So a lot is actually done then maybe on premise, so that we try to work with smaller LLMs or with kind of Mistral or other European-based systems, LLMs, even if the performance at the moment seemed to be a bit less. But we need just to be narrow and precise, and then it also works. Maybe that also address what we call the AI paradox, right? The new BCG study last year, cited everywhere. Also, MIT has an own study which just said, 75% of all executives think AI is super important. Only 25% of those executives think it gives a real value. So a lot of executives with whom I talk, they come up with a solution, say AI is totally overhyped, so we shouldn't do anything. I just turn it around. I just think, how do we get to the 25%? So maybe those 75% also did maybe something wrong, and that's maybe not about the technology. The former CTO of Bosch nicely told us, it's seldom the algorithm which isn't smart enough, but mostly the organization. Maybe we talk also a bit on the organization, because I think, the setup of the organizational setup is actually important. Absolutely. What do you think, Naomi, also?
Yes, I would love to hear a little bit more about perhaps what you all think is really going to be important in terms of leadership too, because we already discussed number one, restructuring current organizations, and then perhaps number two, this idea that if you are going to be leading several agents under you, how does that change leadership as well?
Yeah. Absolutely. So leadership is absolutely important when it comes to AI. At the moment, what I see in many companies is that leadership just gives a sort of AI as a tool to the people, and they think the magic just happens. And of course, there are AI initiatives where they select a certain process, and then they sort of put AI into that process. And again, usually you don't see a big improvement with that. I when it comes to leadership, it's very important that, of course, you bring the tools to the people, but you also need to educate them. And here, what I like is sort of when, of course, you give them resources where they can self-educate themselves, but also when you do workshops together with them, where you invite them and create a safe space where they can experiment with it. I give you an example, because many of the things that we are doing is things that we are doing under high pressure. We don't have time to experiment. And when you want to change a certain process or change a certain way how we do stuff, then you need to give the people the freedom to experiment and also to make failures. And this is why I always say to the leadership, of course, you can put AI in there, but if you don't do a one-day workshop together with your people, where they can think about their process and the process which is interesting to automate, maybe also co-create that together with AI. So ask the AI about the work we are doing and come up with suggestions, and then try to automate it and look at it and also see maybe it fails, maybe it improves, because only then you create that environment where you can do that experiment without any time pressure, and out of that you can then change it. If you just give AI to the people, then of course they use it as they're using sort of as a chatbot, but you don't see the huge improvements. And I think this is, in my opinion, absolutely the core task for leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fully agree with you. This experimental space where you could try, that's super crucial. But I would even go maybe one step further, and this failure tolerant culture absolutely is core for any innovation, but certainly also for that. So I would just like to add maybe three additional things. So first is actually start with strategy and not with the technology. So where do we want to go? And strategy is kind of defining also the boundaries where we're going, but aims always also in ideally also where is actually the North Star where we would like to go, and where do we position, and where actually could AI then help us. But that is just the second or the third step. So the first is really what's the core of our company? How do we differentiate from a customer perspective? What's the positioning? And that is just a classical strategy issue. And I think we could later also talk on strategy, because I think it has a big impact. So in only second, the tech. Second is actually we need to overcome the silos. Too often, especially if we're working on large companies, and that's the opportunity for this more startups, but if you're talking large companies, we have hierarchies and we have actually silos, and we need to break those silos in cross-functional teams, because only then we can achieve end-to-end solutions. So this thinking, what we've discussed previously in the redesign of processes on a higher level, the core process to redesign, that is only possible in a cross-functional way. And that hasn't changed now. I mean, 30 years now doing in the innovation area, and that hasn't changed before. If you radically want to do something, it has to be there. And then the third is also the AI literacy. So what I also see often is we roll out Copilot. It's not that cheap if you really roll it out on a broad scale. And then you check out actually who is using it. And then managers often are super excited how many people use it. The question is for what they're using it. So here, I just see very simple, core, basic conversations they are having. And they think, it's a big thing if I ask a kind of a new market entry in a new country and I ask ChatGPT, well, why is the Copilot? that is not the big thing. So how do we achieve real productivity increases? Real, that means realized one. And the thing is, I just also had last week a discussion with a CEO who just said, yeah, if I use it right now for the marketing and then everybody use it, what is happening? So first, my costs actually increase. And if the marketing job hasn't been improved a lot, it's just additional cost. So we also need to combine it also with target goals. So I mean, we do the same with less, or we expand actually our process and the scope. The very first I would really do is say, let's start with the efficiency things, because these are the easy measurable things. And then the second is really work on the customer journey, because the customer journey is often much more difficult, because you also need to re-educate your customers, and then it's a long-term thing. And I really would always recommend let's go for the quick wins. So really start with strategy, then tech, second the cross-functional teams, and third also build and develop actually AI literacy, that you really can work with it and understand actually where are the benefits and also where are the limits of it. So horrible is, and it totally dysfunctional is, if everybody starts to automate actually email responses, and then you see agents kind of filling up your email box and spamming it because it's all automated, and you got all answered in a nice tone, in everything in a nice gray, or I would call it in a warm color, a lot of friendly emails jumping full. But that is actually horrible. Same as actually automating PowerPoint presentations. So I see so many consultants be excited about that the PowerPoint presentations is automated. Guys, that is horrible, because somebody has to read it and has to understand it. And so really think, where's the core? Then how do we really measure productivity gains? And the end, it's actually a realized cost reduction. That means you have to address the organization itself, whether it's in the efficiency part or in the customer journey part. So first, I would always go for efficiency, but then second, also redesign and rethink the way we create actually customer value. But here we have to measure also in a right way. And even, you know it better, Romano, software productivity. How can you measure it? I remember in the 80s, we measured lines of code automated. We all know it's bullshit, but it's the same like number of patents. You know, we're still measuring those, but it's the wrong measurement. And if we measure the wrong KPIs, we also came to wrong conclusions. And I think there we need more honesty and kind of measuring the right things.
Absolutely, I fully agree, and everything you said was absolutely spot on. So for the organization, the cross-functional team, this is something that I sort of preach every day, and also since years. In my opinion, companies need to organize themselves across the value stream they have. So they need to understand the value stream, the customer journey, and organize themselves across that. But I think what you just triggered something in me when you were talking about all of the code PowerPoint presentation. In the end, what is important, and here again, this is a leadership principle, we need to ensure that the people that are using AI take ownership. And here I have quite a nice example that happened to me, where I saw that this ownership was not there, because what you can see is also that we create quite a lot of AI slot that is created, a work slope that is created at the moment. And here I had recently an example at university. I'm also a bachelor thesis expert, and when we have these bachelor theses, then people need to come in, and in a mid presentation, they need to show what they found out, that they have sort of identified sort of the root questions in there, so that they can go on and do the final work on it. So in that mid presentation. I was, and one of the candidates came, and the slides looked quite nice. It was about Kubernetes, which is quite a huge topic, and in there about certificate management, which is quite a critical topic, but very difficult. And there they sort of needed to find out how to improve the developer experience about that. So the presentation started, nice presentation slides, but no depth in it. It was very shallow. Then they sort of showed what kind of solutions they have. They had 3 solutions they wanted to explore, but all of the solutions were quite obvious. And then they analyzed the solution with a SWOT analysis. And I was like, never saw a SWOT analysis when in regards to solutions, but interesting. But the SWOT analysis were also, again, quite shallow. You could also apply the things to the Christmas tree, and you get sort of the same things. And you see sort of where that all leads. I asked then the student, hey, why solution A? And he said, yeah, well, I don't know. I need to look up in my notes. And I was like, yeah, look it up. And he said, he has not the notes here. And then I said, okay, but solution B builds up on A. Why the build up on A? And he said again, I don't know it. I don't have notes. So it was clearly everything. The whole bachelor thesis was AI generated, and this is quite a bad thing. I mean, I don't say don't use it. Use it, but you need to own the work. You need to understand the work, and this is important. And in my opinion, this is a leadership topic where leadership needs to have a look at it, that people own sort of the AI output they generate.
Yeah, fully agree. So you touch on a very interesting topic, because that is obviously also at the core of Naomi and my work, bachelor thesis and student works. We fully encourage our students to absolutely use AI, fully use it, because it's just like in the 70s, if you don't use calculators, you should use it. And it creates a lot of efficiency, especially from 0 to, I would say, to 60% knowledge. From 0 to 60% knowledge solution, I think that's good. But the really tough thing is that right now, everybody could come very easy to a 60% solution. So I just said my expectations are much higher right now. And now what I would always recommend is use it for the stuff you could automate it, but then use the free time to conduct interviews with customers, engage with customers, get actually fact-based new insights, what you couldn't kind of invent and on the internet-based knowledge. And I think so really use the time to think, use the time to interact, and also use the verification factory, what I call kind of, we still need to know, why is that the right solution, and is it really based on correct data? So we need to verify that. And the best thing what you could do is really get out of your office and use the time to interact with customers, with colleagues, and kind of understanding the problems. And if you do so, I saw actually quite the last 2-3 years, quite a kind of a higher level actually of student work, but we also expected a higher level, because I say, you have automation tools, use it. I expect to use it, but my expectation is much higher. So right now, I expect actually that I get a letter of intent maybe from a potential customer on your bachelor thesis. Say the customer would be interested to work actually on that. We got it. Sometimes it's really rarely because it's really far behind, but I think that's important. But it's also relevant within companies. Use the time to think more, to deeply understand, go to the root cause and think it through. And I fully agree with you, own the solution you get, you fully have to fight for it. Second, actually time for interaction with customers and with your colleagues outside of your silo. And third, actually the verification factory, kind of getting down and really check out what is the testing. Testing of business innovation ideas is one of the, it's actually even more important. It always used to be important when we started 15 years ago with business model thinking. We thought about the ideation phase, and ideation actually has been most of it. Now, after 15 years later, the last 5 to 8 years, we mainly talk about how can I design a test to verify my assumptions. And that is actually a core area. And that means we need to build the bridge to reality. And that is actually super important. But by applying all the tools, I think we have more time to do so. Same as the students, as the teams in companies use the time to get down to and get the ground truths and get reality, capture reality.
Oliver, I want to bring us back real quick to something you mentioned earlier, which I think might connect to this topic, which was around strategizing and whether we need to do that a bit differently. So this connection to reality, is that what you were thinking too in terms of strategizing differently within the firm in an age of agentic AI?
Sorry?
You just mentioned that, you need to have this connection to reality when you're doing business innovation. And so I'm just trying to understand, when you said you think maybe strategizing needs to be thought about differently too within this new paradigm, what do you see are the main changes there?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. So I think the big topic we have here in Europe, I look to Germany, but also I could look to Switzerland and the DACH region and Europe overall, with a lot of strength in manufacturing. And that's where we think, and even our whole strategy process actually is still defined by kind of a hardware solution. So we are thinking in a long term. The biggest thing is the automotive industry, where I've been doing a lot of the last 2 decades with automotive companies and first year, second year suppliers to the automotive industry. And that's kind of interesting. Look to Volkswagen, that is the most obvious and also published there. They still think in terms of the strategy process. We're in the SOP -3, means 3 years before the start of production. That's the kind of thinking. And they develop a long-term strategy and align kind of everything. They align all the suppliers across the different tiers. And that is where they are super strong. They had a lot of challenges with the software-defined vehicle, the Tesla kind of way, the BYD way. Why? Yeah, because it's not just that you need to define software properties and software functionalities. You actually have to redesign your whole organization, because it's a living organization and you need to adapt. Now, when Tesla is releasing something, there is actually a second release, and it's kind of an update. While it's in production, it's actually the next version is actually improved. And if you look to the obvious published data, is actually there had been billions of depreciation with Cariad, and right now with Rivian is kind of interesting, the new software architecture of the Volkswagen products, kind of a US-based company, which is actually called as a joint development. But you see they had actually struggled in designing smart organizations in a more agile way. And that means strategy has actually to be adapted. And now we are coming to the times now after software-defined vehicle hasn't been managed. Now we come to AI, where not in terms of 18 months, a new software generation comes, but every 3 to 4 months, the framework radically changed, because inference costs per new LLM go down from 9 times per year to 900 times per year. I remember a situation where Gemini on-premise had been announced in the year 24, autumn 24 had been announced, but hadn't been included actually in the strategy. So you need to be much more agile in your strategizing way. And I think this is the biggest problem. Overall, the understanding strategy as a plan has to be replaced with creating strategic flexibility. So there's no plan what we need to execute. We always talk in managers, always talk about let's execute our strategy. And they mean with that, we have a strategic plan which we need to firmly execute. And I think this is a main misunderstanding. We have to create more strategic flexibility in those areas where things always change. I'm fully sure a chassis of a car can be done pretty much in a similar way as it has been done the last decade. But in terms of software, we need to have more living organizations, more adaptability. And if we talk about AI, it's even much more. But AI is not just the next digitalization project. It's not the next IT project. An IT project, once it's done, it's stable and it's done. And AI it has to live with kind of certain uncertainties. It has to be adaptable and has to be in a smart living system. So that means actually organizations have to rethink the way they work. That is actually at the end the core, whether we really are able to approach towards an agentic enterprise. It's radically rethink the way you work and the way you develop a strategy. In other words, strategy is not a plan, but it's an ability to strategically flexible adapt to the new situation, which is kind of changing all the time.
Exactly, and that's why I sort of written the book, The Cybernetic Enterprise, because what I also experienced is exactly what you just described, and what I saw sort of in the past is that you have that term cybernetic, which is that steering from the Greek, and in my opinion, and we completely agree, you need to steer much faster your company. And this is why I say you need to become a cybernetic enterprise where humans and machines, AI, are working together to continuously deliver value. And how do you do that? By having feedback loops on all of the levels. You need to have very fast feedback loops. And nowadays, just to say, it's quite easy. You have a ton of data. You also brought in the example about the telecom providers. You have social media where you have a ton of data. You have market data. Everywhere you have data. You just need to use that data. You also have data in your company. You just need to use it. And AI is absolutely brilliant when it comes to big data analysis, sense and learn. And in my opinion, you need to become a company which sense and learns and continuously adapt to it. Of course, as you said, you need to have, of course, a strategy, but you also need to adapt the strategy to the events that are coming from outside. And this is why, in my opinion, this sensing and learning and these feedback loops are crucial in the company, and you cannot do any more 1 year or 2 year or 5 year plans.
Yeah, fully okay. And I think maybe we adapt it to also one step further. I think it's how to become a data-driven company. That's actually at the goal, right? What you say with the cybernetic company and what's actually also any agent-based enterprise is hugely data-based. So, and with data, a few things remain the same as the last 15 years. It's garbage in, garbage out. So we start about talking about AI first company and AI-driven company, and at the end we're talking about working actually on data integration projects because the data is just not there in the right quality, and so that remains the same. And I think for a data-driven company, we need to think in terms of where we really want to go to differentiate the North Star, the vision, the coalition, the common things where we're doing the same. And then we're working on use cases like the few we mentioned, but also building up governance, building up the capabilities of the people, and also the IT infrastructure. We haven't talked about infrastructure. Obviously, that's huge investments. What is actually needed there to work, and even in the compliant area with our GDPR and our kind of environment in which we are working.
So to close us out, I think, since you've mentioned change so much, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on the most exciting disruptive trends coming our way in agentic AI. Where do you think the journey's going? What are you most curious to see if it'll happen or not? Take it away.
Yeah, on my side, at the moment, I'm using quite a lot of Claude Code at the moment. Directly in the console, on the file system, I work with that. And this is just awesome. And now when you think that a little bit more, then I can see that in the future, we sort of will have AI on our computer. I also think what we will see is that the AI chip is directly implemented within your computer and the data is sort of processed on your computer. I think the whole thing about mistrust in US companies, this will increase, and you will see more AIs that run in local data centers or on your computer. This is sort of one angle that I see. And now when we sort of go a little bit in the enterprise mode, what I can see is that the data is the important thing. And what I can think of is that in the future, we don't need sort of the middleware of APIs and everything. The AI can work directly on the data itself. And therefore, also the whole thing about user interfaces is also something that we don't need anymore. In the future, I think we will just directly have a conversation, be that by typing or by sort of talking to the AI, sort of like in the enterprise. And the AI will directly work on the data. So the whole thing about user interfaces, application, apps, middleware, this will be gone.
Yeah, from my side, I first think it's the kind of the way we talk with AI agents. This is mainly more natural as the language we were using. And I see it already. It's kind of nice if you experiment a bit, and if once you're driving and you talk a bit with your even your simple ChatGPT, it's kind of nice how also the mode, how kind of the other person kind of adapts to your speed. While driving, I need still to concentrate on the road. So I say, slow down, I didn't get it, repeat it, or shut up until I asked you. So it's really kind of, it's more adaptive. So I think first the user interface will be very different. I think that's a big breakthrough, because we also saw with ChatGPT, that was the big breakthrough. It was not a technological language-wise large language model, which kind of radically improved. It has been just the 3.5 version, but it was kind of the way how we interact. And I think that will create actually a next interaction. Second, I think we start with agentic islands, simple functions, but we will get to more connected value streams, connected agentic teams, which represent more end-to-end solutions. And I'm convinced we see, I don't know where, but we see agentic, I have a feeling, but we see agentic business models where AI first companies will enter and disrupt certain industries, and we'll see that. I'm quite convinced. The last part, what you mentioned with the geopolitical environment, I think that has also an interesting impact. We just saw in July last year a paper coming up from NVIDIA, people writing about the beauty of small language models, which are actually used also in kind of small environment in on-premise, and I think these are, yeah, this is maybe needed to keep actually independence and to get not in a lock-in situation. And for me, I still fascinated kind of the speed of improvement that the development of the large language models, they're just getting so much better and so much cheaper. And that will drive tremendous things. Even if we think very modestly of a 10x improvement per year, 10x means in 4 years, we have a 10,000 times better environment. Now, if we think we're planning, now we talked about the Agentic Enterprise, if we talk about how to develop our enterprise, our company, and 5 years is not a big thing to think in terms of 5 years in the future. And if we really assume that this keeps on going that way, we will see just very radical new solutions, even what we couldn't think of. And it reminds me a bit to the 90s, where we couldn't expect that there's a whole app industry developing with billions of dollars of investment there and revenue created in the app industry. And I'm super curious, what will be the next thing? What happened if the agentic AI improves and kind of the core technologies radically improve in terms of performance and costs? So I'm curious and I'm super excited because I think there are a lot of opportunities. There are a few challenges also for our society. We see it right now with our new students coming, getting on the market, because the unexperienced people are less requested right now. And I think that trend will keep on going. On the other side, I'm excited because always in history, it has been shown that if radical new technologies come up, there are also a new opportunity space. And let's be the first to realize and identify the opportunity space and realize something out of it.
All right, thank you both so much. It was really interesting to dive into this topic headlong with both of you and get your insights and experiences and stories. And it'll be really interesting to keep track of what's happening, seeing what actually happens on the tech side, on the geopolitical side in organizations. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.